Hi, welcome back to EducateTube.com. My name is Sipsky, your host. Today I want to talk about this camera, the a5100 camera that I recently purchased, used for under $300. This camera I had before, actually a couple years ago, and the reason I sold it off because it overheats. Now I bought it again. Is the overheating issue gone? No, it's still there, but I was able to manage that overheating issue. How I did that is, as you can see, there's a device down here. This is the Ultimate Shogun 4K monitor recorder. I didn't have this device a couple years ago, so that's why I wasn't able to resolve it. But now I have this device, and what happened is this. If you hook up the HDMI output from the Sony a5100, let me see if I can grab the, yeah, okay. And, let's see now. And plug the HDMI output from the camera to the Ultimate Shogun, as you can see here. It's recording right now. Actually, let me stop that. What happened is, initially, right, when you record in the camera, it will shut down after 21 to 24 minutes, okay? But when you hook up the cable, the HDMI output signal to the Ultimate Shogun, for some reason, I don't know why either, this camera will continue on to record for a couple hours. Now, normally this camera will stop anyway after 30 minutes, right? Well, I have a special app that I download for both the a5000 and the 5100, and I think I'll provide a link below how I did that. I was able to make these two cameras have an unlimited recording up to 13 hours instead of 30 minutes, okay? So it's only limited to by the battery, right? So with the battery I tested out, it will last for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So if you hook up the camera using the HDMI to the external monitor like this one here, you could record for over 2 hours. So that's awesome, okay? So there's not a problem anymore with the overheating. If hooking up to the external monitor, this camera will continue on record. Now if you press record on this Sony a5100 like this one here, now the signal will actually show up, the overheating signal, but it doesn't actually turn the camera off. Whereas if you don't hook it up to the monitor, right, through the HDMI cable, after 21 to 24 minutes it will shut itself off. But if you hook it up, after about 45 minutes, you'll see that heat signal showing up, but it will not turn itself off, which is awesome. It will continue on to record. Okay, you can feel a bit of heat on the back here of this camera, but it doesn't stop recording. And now, if you don't press record, you can also make this camera act as just a video camera, and it doesn't record anything. All the recording goes through the HDMI cable, and then we record through this Ultimate Shogun. Let me record through this monitor here. There we go. Okay, so you can record through this monitor instead of using the camera, and it works perfectly. Okay, so that's how I resolved my overheating issue. I was able to manage it now. Excellent camera, by the way, a5100. There's only 3 cameras from Sony that is what I consider as a vlogging camera: the a5000, the a5100, and the recent a6400 because of the flip-up screen. Now, I didn't, want to buy the a6400 camera because it's very expensive. Okay, it's like 6 times more expensive than this camera. If you buy, like I bought this used, and the a6400, you can't really find any camera right now used, right? It's just a new camera coming out, so you might have to work a couple years before you get that camera. That's the best vlogging camera from Sony, but it's very expensive. This one is actually quite cheap, very affordable, but you have to manage the overheating issue. Other than now, why did I buy the a5100 since I already have a5000? The reason, of course, is that it has touch to focus. So this camera here, the a5100, you can touch to focus, and you can pick the object that you want to focus. It's not, mandatory. It's not. It's a nice thing to have. So that's one of the, not the reason why I bought it, but the other reason, of course, is that it's have a better codec. It's able to record, I think it's 50 megabits per second for AV-HD and the XAVC video format. It can do 50 megabits, whereas this camera here can only do AV-HD at 24 megabits. So not as much data that's going to be used Whereas you compare to this one, you have 50 megabits, so much better, twice as much. So that's the other thing why I bought the A5100. Another thing is that you can crank the ISO up to 1600 and you'll be okay with this camera. I don't think you want to go beyond that. 1600 is the limit for this camera, although you could go more, but you'll see a lot of noise. This one has one stop better. This one can go 3200 ISO with with minimal noise. Okay, so it's one stop better than the A5000, the A5100. So there's like those 2-3 things that why I would want the A5100, and it's definitely much cheaper than A6400. Oh, by the way, the focusing between the two, the A5100 is a little bit better. Okay, so in terms of talk about autofocus, I think the A5100 is I think better. I don't know how much better, but I noticed that it's better than the A5000. Okay, now but if you're just sitting just doing talking head, then I don't think it matters that much. Okay, it only matters when you start moving around and focus on different objects, then you can see the difference between the two. All right, and that's why I end up buying the A5100. The only problem, of course, is just make sure I know how to manage the overheating problem with these cameras. Now I was able to do it. So that's how you do it. Okay, just get an external monitor, hook it up through the HDMI video cable, and then just record through the external monitor. Record the Ultimate Shogun, and this one I have here, and you will have no problem. Okay, so this camera now acts as almost like a video camera, and the video signal sends to the Ultimate Shogun external monitor and works perfectly. All right. Oh, the other reason why I bought the A5100 and A5000 is because I have Pilot Fly H1 gimbal, and that gimbal is awesome on these two cameras. Okay, you can hold the gimbal with this camera, and there's not much I guess shaking movement when you use that, especially with this camera. Okay, this camera actually can do 60 frames per second, and this one can only do about 30 frames per second. This one can do 60, and so 60 is, I think it's an ideal situation to slow down your slow motion video. Okay, so you can, if you have 60 frames per second, you can slow it down to 24 frames per second, and you don't see that up and down movement. Whereas this one, when you do that, from 30 to 24, you can actually still see it with the gimbal. So this one can do a better job. And if you have a special software, you can use optical flow, and you can slow it down to 120 frames per second, and it looks perfect. Okay, I'll show you next time. I'll compare the setting for Pilot Fly H1 gimbal, and I'll show you the result from these two cameras. All right, thanks for watching. EducateTube.com.